Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a couple minutes, go over a few things with DeckSight. If you've been following the campaign or have backed it, you probably see the update recently that it's going to take a little bit longer than expected to get them out there, but everything's currently in production. So what I received some production samples. So I figured now would be a good time to, just go over what's in the box and, what to do with it. So this here is pretty representative of what DeckSight comes as. This isn't the official box. I'm still waiting for the actual boxes that come in. They're on their way, but this is an off-the-shelf box. It's about the same size that we use for samples to get the foam cut. So let's go over what's inside the box. So made a few changes to the toolkit. You get your FPC. This is going to change. It's really minor change, and then you got your adhesive strips underneath there. There it is, well protected so it won't get damaged. And so this is the anti-glare version, and this is how it will come. And a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between the anti-glare and the gloss? Can you show a comparison? I can try today. It's kind of difficult, but you might be able to get a bit of an idea. So this is DeckSight, toolkit, FPC, and the strips. So made a little upgrade to the toolkit from what was shown on the website, or on Crowd Supply, that is. Just a real small one. So now I include some of these tweezers, because I find it's pretty helpful to have a pair of tweezers. Now these aren't, the greatest tweezers in the world. This is kind of the free in the box toolkit that you get with some stuff, but this will get you through it if you don't have anything else. But if you're doing this kind of mod, you probably should have something else. Just if you don't have it handy, this will get you through it. So got a couple of different picks, got a screwdriver, a couple of pry tools, a decent suction cup, and tweezers. Put those off to the side. You got the FPC, and we got the strips. So kind of self-explanatory. Now this changed. This FPC cable changed from the original design. Let's see if I got one laying around. Here's one that's been through some paces. So this was the original one, because of the way the screen originally was, where the FPC connector was. This is what was necessary to get the placement right. This is more like the factory one. The problem with this setup was, it was fine, you install it as long as you do everything in the right order, but you can't get to the FPC cable, the connector on the deck side, to disconnect it. And it's a bit of a problem if you ever, right? It's not a problem unless you damage the FPC cable. If you damage it, then you got to take the screen out to get to it, and that's a bit of a problem, because there's a pretty good likelihood that if you remove the screen, you break the screen. Now, I've never broken one of the DeckSight samples. I've never broken one of these, but I have broken an LCD removing it. It's just what happens. I was a bit impatient when I did it, but I have this is actually the LCD, and I put the LCD back in this Steam Deck just so I can go over some installation things, because there's a couple of gotchas that we can make it easy just by showing how we do it. But yeah, if you're not patient when you remove the screen, you could break it, and luckily you have one handy if you do. Okay, now if you read one of the updates on Crowd Supply, I kind of went through the installation process a little bit. And if you recall, I mentioned that you should install the BIOS first. And the reason for that is because once you install the OLED DeckSight, the screen will no longer work. You won't see anything until the DeckSight BIOS is on. So the easiest way to do it is, while you still have the LCD in, just go ahead and flash the BIOS before installing DeckSight. You can actually get around it because your external screen will always work. It's just a little bit harder to navigate. Plus, there's the recovery flash. When you're in the BIOS sort of mode, it always defaults to the external screen. So as long as you have an external screen, you can always pretty much update the BIOS. But this is just the easiest way to do it. So anyway, what I got here is the Steam Deck, and I'm gonna pretend my laptop here is a external monitor, because I'm gonna do some capturing on this. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, my laptop here is an external monitor. You can be plugged into anything, a TV, whatever, HDMI, anything you got. Now, you don't necessarily have to have an external monitor hooked up, but it's just going to make it a lot easier. So I've got a USB stick plugged into the back here, and the USB stick has the DeckSight BIOS on it. So we're going to install that. Now, I'm planning on having a like an install script just to make this easier, but it's good to show people the manual way to do it. That way it sort of covers every base. So I'm going to mount my USB stick, and where did I put it? Oh, it's in here. So on this flash drive, well, this deck has 32 gigs. So I'm going to flash this. This is my 32 gig DeckSight BIOS. That's a stock one. That's a 16 gig. I just happen to have them all on my flash drive for testing. So the actual BIOS flasher is a tool that already exists in SteamOS. It's probably how Valve does their updates, but they do it manually. So you can see we're just mirroring the screen here. This is my external HDMI monitor for all intents and purposes. So this is the actual command we're going to run. And you can find this stuff on the internet, but that's the path to the inside BIOS flasher. Sudo, you need super user access, and this is the path to my BIOS. That's actually not the one I want. That's a stock one that I just flashed to get the LCD working again. There we go, that's the one I want. So let's just enter in the password. And now it's going to do its thing. Now this is really all there is to it. And you can see when it's outside of the OS, it always defaults to the external screen. Now usually when I do this, I don't have an external screen hooked up. I just let it do it and then just wait. I've done it enough that, you know, I pretty much walk away, come back, and know it's good. Now while this is flashing, I'll take a minute to mention that on my website, I've been updating the data store. And you know, if you want to purchase DeckSight, the way to do that right now is through Crowd Supply. But I figure a lot of people probably don't want to install an OLED themselves, a screen in general. So I figured maybe it was a good idea to offer like an install service. So on my website, you can go there and there's a pre-order for a DeckSight install. You ship it in, install it, flash the BIOS, send it back to you. Working. So, and on there I also have a couple of add-ons. You can upgrade your deck to 32 gig. You can upgrade the Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi 6E. And those are just available as add-ons for DeckSight, not by themselves. It's not really worth it for me to, like, I don't really want to charge the amount that a lot of other people charge to do it. So it's not really worth it for me to do those outside of the fact that I already have one. To keep in mind, I'll have a few extra decks that are DeckSights that don't go to Crowd Supply specifically for that purpose. Alright, so the deck always defaults to the external screen, so right now that's my laptop because it's coming through the capture device. So it's booted, the BIOS is flash, it has a DeckSight BIOS on it, so it's running. That screen won't work because that's the LCD still. So if I normally you disconnect the external monitor, it defaults back to the screen, it's not going to work. But the reason I did this is now I know it's rebooted, I know it works. So now I can proceed with installing the screen. Okay, it should be pretty obvious that you want to power down the deck. A lot of people say you should put it in battery storage mode. Battery storage mode just sort of, for lack of a better word, it sort of disconnects the battery, you know, from powering the rest of the deck, so that it's a little safer. I tend to not bother, but you know, you do you. Now I switch the screen in this thing so often that I don't even put the adhesive strips on it. I just dab a little glue. I dab a little bit of this glue on. Now, you know, this stuff's made for like cell phones and stuff. You can get it off of Amazon. And if you went all the way around, it'd be perfectly fine to just keep this. The only thing about that is the adhesive strips, the 3M VHB. It lifts the screen up a little bit. So if you use something like this, your screen will be sunken like a 0.5 millimeter. But strips are included, so you know, that's what you should do. You should use the strips, but either way, do whatever you want. Now, like I said, I only put like 2 dabs in just to hold the screen in, because I'm going to take it out again anyway. And I didn't even put all screws in my deck. So actually I didn't put any screws on, I just clipped it in. So normally what I do, maybe it's just how this deck is, but I go for this side, just start prying a little. You'll want to be careful if your deck has a painted shell, but if it has a painted shell, that means you've probably done this before and you already knew better. So it's good to start around the trigger, you just got to be careful. but you want to use your picks. There it goes. Got something popped. Just go along the top here. Okay, that's popped. And you can use your pry tool, get in there a little, squeeze it. And once you get a couple of spots popped, it makes it way easier. Just getting started, it's kind of a pain. There it is. And this is an aftermarket shell, so the stock one's a little bit more snug than this one, but it's nothing too much. The Steam Deck, you don't really have to worry about breaking clips or anything, because it's well designed. I've taken it apart like a million times and never broke a clip. This is basically what you're going to be looking at now. To remove the screen, and it powered back on. Look at that. Well, you should put it in battery storage mode. Anyway, what did I get rid of that for? I need that. So now, first thing you want to do is, and I guess I'll use the tools that come in the toolkit. First, we want to take our shield off, and the first thing I do is disconnect the battery. And you got a screw hidden under here. I'm going to try to do this just using the tools that come in the kit. Okay, now don't follow along too hard because your Steam Deck will probably have more screws in it. Like I said, I only installed the LCD for demonstration purposes, so I didn't put 100% back together. And it goes without saying that you want to remember where the screws you took out came from. Alright, so first thing, you probably want to remove the SSD. One screw, make sure it doesn't stay there. Pops up and out. This one's got a metal cover on it for a heat sink. Then you want to pry this up. Now I know there's different motherboard revisions, but I think the Wi-Fi module's in the same spot on all of them. So these are not the greatest tweezers in the world, and the reason they're included is because they have sort of blunt tips. I didn't want to include anything that was too sharp. Somebody hurt themselves, and oh man, your stuff's too sharp. I mean, it's a free tool. So you disconnect both of those antennas, and you got to be very, very careful when you remove these. These connectors are very fragile, very small wires. So you just pull that out like that. Don't grab it by the wire, grab it by the top of the connector. So these tweezers are a little bit flimsy, but they get the job done. Normally I use this pair, but this pair is very sharp and it's rigid, so you can poke a hole right in the FPC cable when you use it for help. So I didn't want Definitely not something I wanted to deal with, and I did want to include something, so this it is. Okay, first, or next, remove all 3 screws or 2 screws for the heat sink, because one was part of the cover. And you got 2 left, and you should also note that you need thermal paste while you're doing this. Now this screw doesn't come all the way out, it's captive. So once it's loose, these 2 screws, part of the fan, are actually part of the back cover. They go through the back cover and in. So the fan has 2 screws. Get those out of there. I promised I would use parts of the kit. Lift the fan out, make sure you unplugged it. Okay, set that aside. Oh, actually I should have did this a moment ago. I should have disconnected the battery. I like to disconnect the battery as soon as I take this off. You got a little pull tab here. You just hold on to that, pull it. This can be kind of tough if it's never been removed before, so you may have to like use some force, and you don't really want to rip this out because it's the best thing you can use to grab it, so just be careful. Okay, I think all the screws are out of my motherboard here. Like one more. Okay, now before I lift this motherboard out, I want to disconnect a couple of these FPC cables. This one here, and this one here is for the screen. Oh, I didn't realize we weren't all the way in there. So this one here is for the screen. This is the controller board here. So I'm going to lift the clasp. Okay. And grab it by the stiffener, this blue part, and just pull it out. Okay. Now this one, you be careful, especially when you're messing with the motherboard, because you can't really get placements. Carefully pop this. Okay, now it's lifted. You do not want to break that tab. If you break that tab, you're going to have a bad day. It can be replaced by somebody who knows what they're doing. I replace them sometimes just because they get worn out. I plug them in and out so much, but it's not a fun thing to do, and you need some fairly decent soldering skills to get through it. Okay, so now this one's disconnected, this is disconnected, and I want to lift up and tilt out the motherboard. Okay, so this one's still connected. That's why I lifted it this way. Pop. Like I said, be very careful with these tabs. If you don't do this very often, you break a tab, one of these plastic tabs, you will have a bad day because you'll be jamming all kind of stuff in there to get it working again. Okay, so now motherboard's out, no reason to disconnect that. So now we set this to the side. So there's the factory FPC cable for the monitor. So this little flap comes up. You peel it back like that. And then you need to disconnect it. Very careful. You do not want to go too haywire pulling that out. So now you pull this guy out. That's that. Now that we have all that done, now we can pull our screen out. So now this is generally the hard part. But this screen is not actually glued in. Just a couple of dabs of this stuff, because I change it so much just doing testing that and demonstrations like this that it's not worth the effort to put real adhesive strips on this deck. But so it's a lot easier for me to pull this one out. But what you're going to want to do, and you might actually want to start on this side, I forget now, easiest way to do this is to warm up around the perimeter, because this is where the adhesive is, and warming it up will soften it, make it a little bit easier to get out. Now you generally want to use like a hair dryer or something. You can use a heat gun. The problem with heat guns is they tend to get too hot. You do not want to melt the plastic, so I would advise using a hair dryer, or if you have like a soldering iron with a temperature controlled heat gun, put it on nice and low, warm up all around the perimeter, and then you gotta work. Do not use a metal tool. If you use, I think that's how I broke the one LCD. Once you start to get it to pry up, you want to go in here like this, right? Kind of wedge under the screen as you lift out. Now, yours won't come out that easy, but as you get it up a little bit, you want to come and sort of cut the glue with the pick, slowly but surely. And there is a high chance you will destroy the LCD while taking it out if you're not really patient. So that's fair warning. But hopefully you'll never want to use it again. Set it this side. Now after you do that, you're gonna have a ton of not a ton, but you'll have a bunch of residue from adhesive that you have to pick out. This one's already pretty much clean, but since you've already opened a deck, you don't really need these anymore, unless you want to keep them for the future. But they make good like little scrapers to scrape all the junk off, and you have to get it pretty clean or else the screen won't sit flush again. So easiest thing to do is take a Q-tip and wet the adhesive, because it's like foam. Just wet it, maybe give it a couple of minutes, wet it again, and then, you know, once it's kind of gooey, start scraping at it. And that's the easiest way to clean it up. And back and forth with the isopropyl alcohol swab and the scraper, and you'll be in good shape. Just be careful, because that's your ambient light sensor, and I think there's microphones in there too. I can't remember. Yeah, something like that. But you don't want to damage any FPC cables, especially that one. Parts are hard to get a hold of. Alright, so then we're ready for DeckSight adhesive strips. So this takes an extra second, so I'm gonna do this and then I'll come back and show you how it's laid up. Okay, so I decided to do that off camera because it's kind of annoying with the adhesive strips being so thin to peel the backing off, and you got to kind of finagle it a little bit. But I just want to show how they're laid out. Now there's 3 different sizes. There's 6 different strips. So there's a wide long one that goes over here. Then there's a long narrow one that goes over here. And then the other 4 are all the same size. So they go here, 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 and here. And you want to keep this area clear because that's your ambient light sensor. And so DeckSight keeps the ALS whole, so it will see the ambient light sensor. So doesn't have to be 100% perfect, just has to be on there. And the gaps aren't the stock adhesive has gaps in it too. It has more gaps because they're just little triangles. So the gaps are nothing to worry about, just as long as you have that clear. Now this one I'm going to install with the proper adhesive because I got to do an installation test. Now FPC connector goes on this side right there over that hole. And get it in there, line it up, and that part's easy. Give it a little light press, and over a couple days that'll get so sticky that you wouldn't want to get it out of there. So that's installed. Our FPC is visible. And if you did something wrong here, if you installed it upside down, you'll want to remove it as soon as possible because this VHB, it sort of sets more over time. So it's not as firmly held in the very beginning. Now this is the anti-glare version, if you can see it. Now this compared to the stock one, it's not quite as anti-glare as the stock one. Or maybe. Yeah, it's actually pretty similar. The etching on this, the grain is larger. So with the OLED, you can actually see more of the grain. So I had a similar glass at first and I didn't like it. So I actually went with a more expensive, finer grained etched glass for DeckSight. So now we install the FPC. Now this is the part that's going to change a little bit because I'm not entirely thrilled about this FPC. They didn't get the shape of the cover cloth right, and for a small production batch, so this is a stock one, and it has the flap and it has a stiffener, and this is for small production runs. This kind of stuff is hard to reproduce, so we do have a cloth covering on this one, but the stiffener is kind of a pain to deal with. The manufacturer that makes the FPC cable doesn't really want to deal with it, and it's just turning into a pain in the ass. So what I'm likely to wind up doing is eliminating the flap. The FPC cable itself is fine, it's going to stay as it is, but I'll probably eliminate the flap and then have a separate piece. I'll include a separate piece, either some tape or the shielding fabric that you just apply over the hole after you've connected it. It's probably the easiest thing to do. And the reason that this covers this hole is for EMI. You know, when you do CE or FCC testing, you got to watch out for electromagnetic interference. You know, realistically, most people never know the difference, but you know, for regulation's sake, you need to cover a hole. So I'm actually going to snip this off, because in the version that's going to ship, I think that won't be there like that. So wherever I put my scissors, here they are. Okay, so I just snipped that little thing off to make this a little more representative of what will probably be in the version that ships. This is the only thing that's going to change, and just like I said, just the shielding part. It'll be more like this with some kind of shielding tape. This is just some copper tape that I just snipped off, but there will be something in the kit. It might be aluminum tape, I don't know, I'll have to think about it, but nothing too extravagant. So we want to insert our FPC cable in there. And it's kind of tough to do with a phone in my face, but okay, that's in. Very important. Want to make sure that's all the way in and it's in straight, and you don't poke a hole in it. You just want to kind of press on the stiffener, push it in, and this is pretty much what you're looking for right here. And then you close the clasp, and you can tell when it's straight because there's the insertion line, and it kind of warns you if you're crooked. If you're crooked, it doesn't work, and you don't want to put it back together to have to take it back apart. So take a better look at it. Looks good and straight to me. And that's when you want to take your square piece of whatever's in the kit, and cover the hole. Okay, now that takes care of our EMI concerns. Now we reinstall the motherboard. And I forgot to get more thermal paste, but I'll grab some. You definitely want to have more thermal paste. And pop our flap, install this one like this. Connected. Get those out of the way. Battery cable out of the way. And the USB-C port and the power button, you got to kind of slide it in there. Make sure it goes in the hole. Make sure it's flat. And make sure your display connector is hanging out like this. So now we want to put this back in. Closed. We got everything, yeah. Let's get our antennas back on. Okay. Now we need to get this installed. Make sure we're in the frame here. Pop our flap up. And this part can be a little bit tricky. Grab it, flip it over, and push it in. Now this can be a little bit of a pain. Not too bad though. The thing about it is this side has, and it's like it on the factory connector too, if I can see. Yeah. I don't know if that locks up. There are these little locking tabs right here and right here, and these are supposed to go straight in and then lock the FPC in so it doesn't back out. These can be kind of a pain, and it makes you want to insert the connector at an angle downward. You can, but that's never the recommended way to do it. Even in the data sheet for the connector, it doesn't say you should do that. So you do want to try to go straight in. And actually what you can do is go like this. Grab it from the sides, because the stiffener part is wider than the cable, so you can kind of bump it from the side and sort of push it in a little. And if you're careful, you'll get in there right. Okay, yeah. It's over the tabs. I don't know if you can see that, but the tabs are over top of these little metal pieces, so you know it's in. You pull the clasp down. Nice and straight. You can see the white line. It's in straight, it's in there, it's good to go. Alright, now let's get the screws in, let's get the SSD back in. I think I'll put all the screws in this time. And this screwdriver, good thing to do with this would be to run a magnet across it a couple times, magnetize it so that the screws stick to it. So just because I don't have a magnet handy, I'm going to finish this off with a screwdriver that is magnetic, because that makes it so much easier. And again, you really got to keep notes when you're taking the screws out, because they're all different lengths. Make sure they go back in the right spot. and some of them are supposed to be empty holes because the shield and the case screws go through them. Okay, yeah. I generally do this a lot quicker. It's just sort of taking my time and blabbing to the camera. Okay, be right back. I gotta get some thermal paste. Alright, so if you've been following along so far, you now know how to install it, you know how to install the BIOS, and you're pretty much ready to start doing whatever you do with your Steam Deck. Now, a couple other things to mention that you probably want to do next is one, the brightness. The Steam Deck LCD model, the way that it controls brightness and hardware, isn't something that was easy to intercept. So on my desktop, which also runs Linux, but it runs Wayland, by default it controls brightness via software, and just through having that hooked up, I realized that that's completely convincing. It's realistically better in some ways than doing it via hardware, which I can do on my development setup. So that's the route we decided to go for Steam Deck, or for DeckSight. So what that entails is, because Steam Deck's kind of its own animal, the desktop mode runs in X11, and then Game UI runs the GameScope compositor, which is based on Wayland. So you have to have two different methods. So the first method I have is by running a service that runs a script to watch the GPU brightness control and then redirect it back into software. So that's an easy install. I'll have some notes about that up on my website as soon as I get around to it. That script's already done. Been testing it for a bit. Then as far as when it gets into GameScope, that script doesn't work. But what would work is probably, I'm still working on that, but is a Decky Loader plugin. So I've already got that kind of started. I have to actually do some work on it to get it working, but it should be completely possible. So that's how that's going to go. You'll want to install the script, run the service, which won't be harmed by updates, and then Decky Loader, I should have a plugin for that. That'll take care of the brightness, and then maybe we'll add some things to that in the future. So then the newer versions of SteamOS, I'm not sure if it's in stable yet, but it's at least in one of the preview versions. They switched to a version of GameScope where now it uses display scripts to set up the displays. So basically what the script does is it makes it work more like the stock displays, where you can get refresh rates limits in every interval from, say, whatever to whatever. So this script is intended to do 40 to 80, which GameScope actually picks it up and does 10 to 80 with 1 hertz intervals, and that works. I've been using that. That works good. So the only thing I have to work on is the Decky Loader plugin, and I should hopefully get that working before they start shipping. If not, it should be done very shortly thereafter. So I'll post some updates and maybe some more in-depth explanations on the website. And don't forget, you want to get a hold of a DeckSight and you don't want to install it, go to the website. Starting to do pre-orders for an install service. There's a couple of add-ons you can add, like I mentioned before, and you know, if that works for you, give it a try. Derp. Okay, now it's all back together. If the install went okay, when I power it up, it's going to, yeah, we're going to have something on screen. And since we disconnected the battery, the charger has to be plugged in. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, because it won't start again unless the charger's plugged in once the battery is disconnected. Let's fire it up, see what we get. There we go. Now, don't ask me why it takes a while to boot up that first time after plugging it back in, but it gets a little scary. That's why sometimes it's good if you just plug the external monitor in so you know better. A couple of little quirks, just with the fact that an OLED is in an LCD model Steam Deck and not everything is 100% set up for it. Timings are, I don't want to say timings like as far as like panel timings, like resolution stuff, but like timings as far as when the display initializes, you get a slight flash, usually in a line, and it's only when it's changing like modes, like when it's booting up, or if you exit out of game scope. And every once in a while, actually maybe like 1 out of every 3 times, when it comes back up, you might be missing the color. Like if you just push the power button to wake it up, the screen might look funny because it's missing red, and it's a minor inconvenience because all you got to do is just, tap the button to put it to sleep, and then tap it again, wake it back up. But that is sort of a little quirk that needs to be worked around, and it's really hard to get there. So hopefully we'll get to that sooner than later, but it's not too big of an annoyance. It's just definitely worth mentioning. And for whatever reason, when it first starts up like this, on newer versions of SteamOS, it's sideways because they started handling the panel different. It used to, on the internal connector, it used to just automatically rotate the panel because that's how the stock one is. So if that's the case, easiest thing to do is just come down to settings here, open it, go to display. It's kind of tough because it's backwards, but just click on this one right here. Just click on apply. Okay, all fixed. You gotta hit keep. Okay, all fixed. So that's how you can tell it's running at 80 hertz, because the refresh rate, you see a little bit of flicker. That's because the refresh rate of this is 80 and the camera's 60, so they're slightly out of sync, but that's okay. Alright, thanks for watching again, and to everybody who backed it so far, thank you. It's much appreciated. I hope you enjoy DeckSight when you get a hold of it. Take care.